The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, Shadow of the Colossus, Dragon's Dogma, and Monster Hunter are just a few of the sources of inspiration for Eternal Strands that Yellow Brick Games have been transparent about. And as the saying goes, jack of all trades, master of none, which is usually accurate. However, Eternal Strands defies conventional wisdom with sublime gameplay as proof that you can offer a little bit of everything. Eternal Strands is a buffet, serving a little bit from RPGs and adventure games from the past few decades. There are telekinetic powers, elemental spells, looting, crafting, light leveling, base management, diverse magical lands, and of course, epic colossal encounters. You play as Brynn, a young, courageous, and inexperienced mage, which in Eternal Strands is called a Weaver, and with the help of her fellow Weaver outcasts, Brynn is at the forefront of recovering the Enclave from the evil that has infected the lands. The story is told to you through a variety of mediums. There is the occasional CGI cutscene, and great looking, almost anime style animations, but for the most part, it was told through static 2D art. It would have been really great if more cutscenes were animated, but the voice acting was good and gave an authenticity to each character. The adventure was also aided by a fantastic score from Austin Wintory, who made a name for himself from games like Journey and Assassin's Creed Syndicate. The gameplay loop of Eternal Strands is simple but satisfying. Get a quest, head out into the Enclave, fight enemies, collect loot and treasure, complete the quest, and then return to camp to craft and upgrade. What made the loop unique and addicting was the amount of elements in the sandbox and a gameplay that constantly surprised you with the unexpected. Each biome has an epic encounter that you will need to defeat if you want to learn a new magic spell. The first time that you defeat each behemoth requires a brutish approach. All it asks is that you figure out what works and survive, even if sometimes you figure out how to exploit each Goliath. Taking this a step further to upgrade each strand, you will need to gather research, learn their weaknesses, and then similar to Horizon Zero Dawn, surgically defeat these epic beasts. And it was a lot more fun when you knew what their weaknesses were the second and third time around. When it comes to bringing down these gargantuans, combat is truly your oyster. If you want to be focused on magic, you can focus on finding and leveling up magic spells, but if you would rather take a more traditional approach to this fantasy game, you could focus on upgrading your bow, sword and shield, or your two-handed weapon. Whenever you are having a difficult time, the key is to remember that Eternal Strands wants you to experiment. I kept having a difficult time with an enemy later in the game. Fire wasn't working, ice wasn't working, and weapons weren't really working either. Then I remembered one of the first skills that Eternal Strands gives you, which was the kinetic grasp, and then I just picked up the enemy and flung them off the cliff into the deep abyss below. If the highlight of Eternal Strands was the emergent gameplay, then the underlying issue is that too many things deviated the player from it. The plot had more threads or strands that was needed and became overly complex with unnecessary romances and plenty of side plots. There is also too much loading, and this is exacerbated when there are plot points and quests that require you to speak to adversaries back to back, but they are located in different areas. There was also a weather system with flash freezes and droughts in Eternal Strands that I can appreciate for the variety for return visits, but it mostly became frustrating and inconvenient, especially when you need to return to take down an arc for the second or third time. What I usually ended up doing was just sleeping in the tent until weather was right to avoid the inconvenience altogether. The other issues were related to combat. To begin with, there was a lock-on ability which actually kept you in the enemy's orbit when you tried to dodge roll, and it would keep you in danger instead of roll you away from it. Next, by the end of the game, you have a lot of spells and often needed to use a combination of them. This meant that you needed to constantly open the slow motion radial menu. It would have been great if you had a hotkey to program more frequent spells to. This would have provided a more fluid combat experience. Moreover, the climbing system in Eternal Strands is effortless, but it also worked as a double-edged sword as during battle, you could often easily begin climbing. Eternal Strands' biggest strength is experimentation, and the game constantly rewards you for doing so. It might lack the polish, but it harmoniously blends elements of Zelda, Monster Hunter, Dragon's Dogma, and Shadow of the Colossus together. While it might be true that each element that Eternal Strands is drawing inspiration from is better in the source material, it was the ability to combine all of these elements into one massive sandbox that created the wonderful adventure full of emergent experiences. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to see more like it. Video games is a positivity-forward outlet, a place about being good to your fellow gamer and better to your fellow human. Every single person in the world has the power to make it a better place, and if this sounds like you, I would love to have you as a member of this community, and would love to see you in the comments. That's all for this video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.